Welcome to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. The Pharmacy Future Leaders is part of the Pharmacy Podcast Network, focusing on pharmacy student perspectives, interviews, and the future outlook of our pharmacy industry.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network. I'm your co-host, Tony Guerra, for the Pharmacy Future Leaders podcast, broadcasting from the Health and Public Services building on the DMACC Ankeny, Iowa campus. Connect with me on YouTube at TonyPharmD, where you can find over 800 pharmacy videos supporting my audiobook, Memorizing Pharmacology. Today, we have a special podcast connecting fourth-year APPE student pharmacists from two Big Ten schools, the University of Iowa and Purdue University, both students in Block 2 of their rotations. Emily Henningsen from the University of Iowa will take us through the interview.
This is SangA Yun, a PharmD candidate at Purdue University, and you're listening to the Pharmacy Podcast.
Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast. I'm here tonight with SangA Yun, a PharmD candidate at Purdue University. She's from West Lafayette, Indiana, and she's interested in pursuing a fellowship in the pharmaceutical industry after graduation. SangA, welcome, and welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast. Okay, this is Emily Henningsen, a current fourth-year student pharmacist at the University of Iowa College of Pharmacy, and I'm here with SangA today, and she's a student pharmacist from Purdue. So welcome onto the podcast. Thanks for joining us tonight. So we'll just start with the basics. So what was your road to pharmacy school, and how did you choose pharmacy as a profession?
So I chose pharmacy because ever since in high school, I always knew that I wanted to go into the healthcare field, and I knew that pharmacists are one of the most trusted professionals, and I wanted to be the go-to drug experts for other healthcare professionals such as physicians and nurses. In addition, I really liked how pharmacists were easily accessible for patients. For instance, like as a patient, you can easily go to the pharmacy and ask for a pharmacist for his or her opinion, and I really liked how they were a very trusted expert and very accessible to patients.
Yeah, awesome. So then it looks like, as you said, you started at Purdue University, and you said that you're from the state of Indiana, and you chose to stay in-state, obviously, and go to pharmacy school at Purdue. So what made you choose to stay in Indiana, and why did you choose Purdue over maybe other colleges that had pharmacy programs?
Sure. So I think it helped that I'm from West Lafayette, Indiana, where Purdue is located. So I had the opportunity to talk to some Purdue pharmacy students before I even began college. So I knew that I'd be receiving a very quality education at Purdue University, and I also knew that it would be one of the top pharmacy schools in the nation. And I may be biased, but I think it's the best pharmacy school in the nation. And I just really liked, since I have lived in West Lafayette, Purdue just naturally felt like a home to me. And I honestly, within the last years that I've attended Purdue, I really can speak to that. I feel like Purdue has really been an amazing pharmacy school for me, and I've learned so much, and there's a great alumni base as well. So, Purdue definitely gives a quality education to all the students. Yeah,
definitely. And did you do undergrad at Purdue as well?
So I did 1 year of pre-pharmacy at Purdue before going into pharmacy school. So I guess that's another decision that kind of impacted me going into Purdue, because I also did, I kind of did like an accelerated track in which I took a summer class in organic chemistry before I started my pre-pharmacies, because I did my pre-pharmacy in 1 year, and some students, they typically do 2 to 4 years depending on if they get a bachelor's or not. Mm-hmm. So I also wanted to challenge myself and do my pre-pharmacy in 1 year. So it also helped that I had some AP classes in high school, which allowed me to apply to pharmacy school my freshman year.
Sure, yeah. So that's awesome that you can do 1 year at Iowa too. It's between 2 and 4, whatever you make of it. But after you did get in after that first year, did you feel like you were ready, and did you feel prepared that just 1 year, kind of away from home but still at home, got you ready to kind of tackle this pretty difficult curriculum?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so actually, so for me personally, it really helped that my academic advisor was a really good support system for me. I remember like right before I started pre-pharmacy, I talked to him about considering doing this 1-year option, and like I guess the thing is there was nothing to lose. Like if I didn't get into pharmacy school within 1 year, then I would be on the same playing field as the other students.
Yeah.
And I guess I wanted to challenge myself. And I guess going back to your question about like if I felt prepared or not, like I do remember telling him about how, I kind of wish I had the opportunity to take, other electives while I was in pre-pharmacy, but, he also mentioned about how, nobody's, perfect when you go into pharmacy school. You're supposed to learn throughout your time in pharmacy school. You're not supposed to be 100% ready. So, I mean, I feel like Purdue did a really good job in preparing me along the way of becoming, more prepared.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point that you make with the, you really didn't have anything to lose with completing it in 1 year. You could just go back and try again. And I think that's what's kind of nice about these programs that, let you in after 2, 3, 4 years. You do have kind of a couple of chances, so it's not all lost and you're not stuck trying to find a job in something maybe you don't want to do once you get out. So that's really interesting. I didn't know you could get in after 1 year, so that's really awesome. So I guess going back to your time at Purdue, so you've been involved during your time in pharmacy school in quite a few organizations. So could you just touch on some of the most meaningful organizations or things you've done in them and how those have impacted you and the route you hope to take after graduation?
I think the organization that had the most impact for me is the Academy of Managed Care Pharmacy, or AMCP. And I first joined this organization as a P1 without knowing what managed care was. And I just wanted to know about what managed care is and just explore different opportunities. So joining AMCP has definitely opened up a lot of doors for me because I had the opportunity to participate in the P&T competition and also eventually land an internship at Aetna last summer. And I would not have had these opportunities otherwise. In addition, I just remember that back my P1 year, I thought I wanted to go to maybe a community or a clinical route, and now I'm considering more of a career in pharmaceutical industry or managed care. So it has really, helped me shape my interests throughout my time in pharmacy school.
Yeah, awesome. So maybe for some of those that aren't quite as familiar, can you just touch a little bit on what managed care is and what a pharmacist's role is in that field?
Sure. So for managed care, I would say that it can be part of any setting in pharmacy. So for instance, in a community setting, when a pharmacist is working with prior authorization that's related to managed care, or for instance, in a hospital setting, if a pharmacist is on the P&T committee and deciding what drugs to add to the hospital's formulary list, then that's also part of managed care. So that's also something that I really liked about it, is that no matter what setting of pharmacy you go into, it's always something that you're practicing. And then I guess another way pharmacists can go into managed care is by working in an insurance company. And I feel like that can also kind of maybe get a bad rep because people might have a negative association with insurance companies. But actually, when I did my internship at Aetna last summer, I really got the feeling that the pharmacists do really care for the patients, and they're trying to lower the costs of healthcare costs while also trying to give the best quality healthcare. So it's about balancing costs, but also trying to provide the patients the best quality healthcare.
Yeah, that's really awesome. Cool. So I guess going into that, both of us are pretty new at the fourth year game, being fourth year student pharmacists. So you're currently in your second rotation, and you're at Novocure, which is a rotation in oncology marketing, and your first rotation was at Eli Lilly in medical affairs. So can you just touch on both of those and kind of what a day in the life was like at your first rotation and where you're at now, and what you've learned in both of those that maybe can help you along in on your route to where you hope to end up?
Sure. So for Eli Lilly and Novocure, I would say that they're both, although they're both industry rotations, they have both been different experiences for me, and both have been really amazing. For I guess for industry settings in general, I feel like there isn't really like a typical day-to-day activity. I feel like every day is different, which is what I really love about the industry. But for both Eli Lilly and Novocure, I would say that they were more project-based, so I would be doing different types of projects. So for instance, at Lilly, my project was I developed like a training material for psoriatic arthritis, as well as look at patient-reported outcomes. And at Novocure right now, I'm working with more of the marketing side. And while I do have big projects going on, since I'm here for 2 months, since this is my second month, I am also working a lot of small side projects at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Those sound like really great experiences to kind of lead you in the direction that you hope to go. So that's really great that you could get to have those experiences. And so kind of like I touched on, since we're both pretty new to the P4 game, I know that my first few days, especially my first rotation, were kind of scary. So knowing what you know now, what advice would you have to a P4 who's just starting on rotations that you wish you would have known on your first couple of days?
So I know that I can't really speak to the clinical side since my first 3 months have been all industry rotations, but I would say that not everything is black and white, and I guess this kind of applies to the clinical side as well. I feel like in pharmacy school, we are geared towards like learning how to take exams, and I feel like in exams usually there's like one right answer to the question, but within the industry, and I feel like also within the clinical side too, I just feel like there's always multiple right answers to problems, and I would say I would say my advice is just to like maybe keep an open mind to everything, and it's okay to have like trials and errors, since I think the point of rotation is to continuously learn. And I also have an advice that I received from someone else, was to jot down 3 things that you learned from a rotation. So at the end of the rotation, just to like write down 3 new things that you learned. And I also keep like a journal to myself to help me like remember like what kind of projects I did and what kind of things that I learned on that rotation, which have also been really helpful for me.
Yeah, I actually keep a journal too. We have to keep one we have to log our interventions, I guess, at Iowa, but I've kind of kept my own personal list too. So I know that, with kind of like you said, the trials and tribulations of not everything going perfect, maybe at your rotation, maybe you not knowing something, it's really nice to look back on that list and say like, wow, I did this really cool thing. Like I knew that and I knew that. So just because I'm not so well versed in maybe one aspect quite yet, I know that I learned from it, and I know that I'm already doing all these great things. So I do think that's a really awesome reminder of, like how far you've come and that you're actually doing some good. So that's a really good point. Cool. So when I had spoken to you a little bit to get to know you before the interview, you had mentioned that you were a teaching assistant for 5 different classes. So how did you get involved in that?
So I first got involved in being a TA by simply just like emailing a professor, telling him, oh, I'm interested in being a TA for this class. Do you have an opening? And I guess like I also knew from the beginning too that I wanted to become more involved in academia, and later on with my other classes, I had one of my professors ask me if I would be interested in being a TA for her class. So I guess in the beginning I got my foot wet with being a TA just by like asking around and seeing if they had an opening for the teaching assistant position.
Yeah, and was this within the College of Pharmacy, or is this just at Purdue, like the undergraduate courses?
Oh, so it was in the Purdue College of Pharmacy.
College of Pharmacy, awesome. And what kind of things did you do as a TA?
So I would say that my roles differed from one to another. So, for instance, I was a TA for a compounding and counseling laboratory my P2 year. So that was more within a small setting within pharmacy professional lab. So for that, I would be the students would be practicing their counseling techniques on me, and it would just be more of a one-on-one interaction, which I really enjoyed. And another class that I TA'd for was an integrated pharmacotherapy course, in which sometimes I would have students come to my office hours. So that aspect I really liked. And I would also say that something that I did in all the classes as a TA was also like helping with the grading aspects as well.
Mhm. Yeah, cool. So how did those roles in general pique your interest into potentially pursuing an academic role at a pharmacy school, and what kind of things do you think you would enjoy maybe taking on in a teaching role after graduation?
Sure. So I would say that in the future, my ideal job would be I know that like earlier I mentioned that I was interested in maybe going to the pharmaceutical industry after graduation. So I've noticed that within pharmacy schools, sometimes we don't really learn about the pharmaceutical industry as much as the clinical side. I would say that piqued my interest in pursuing an academic role in that now I am potentially interested in being a part-time faculty at a college of pharmacy. So I know that I mentioned earlier about how I'm potentially interested in pursuing a career in the pharmaceutical industry after graduation. So right now I'm really interested in a pharmaceutical industry fellowship affiliated with a pharmacy school, because then I'm able to teach at a pharmacy school while also working at a pharmaceutical industry. I guess for me, I really like the fact that you're able to shape the education of future healthcare professionals, and I also see that there's a need for students in the pharmaceutical industry setting, because I know that for me at Purdue, I was lucky to have an elective in the pharmaceutical industry, but I know that not all the pharmacy schools have one. So I would also be potentially interested in creating an elective at a pharmacy school as well.
Yeah, I think that how many elective hours do you have to take at Purdue?
It actually recently changed because we had to add an immunization elective, so I think right now it's 11 credit hours for electives. Okay,
I think we were 12, so I know that, like you said, with maybe having an elective that people can kind of take to pique their interest, I think that would be great, because I know that some of the potential areas that I'm pursuing came from an elective. Like, I know that I learned in the classroom just the basics, but really those electives helped push it a step further and really get me interested in a couple of topics. So I think that would be really helpful, for students who maybe think that that's something they want to get into, especially the pharmaceutical industry, but they're not quite sure. That'd be a great way just to give them some more foundational knowledge, to especially maybe prepare them for a potential rotation that they could have in the pharmaceutical industry.
Yeah, I definitely agree.
Yeah. So I guess going off of that, you kind of talked about how you can tie those worlds together, so that's really cool. So I guess as you continue on your fourth and final year of pharmacy school, what are you most excited about as you do more rotations and kind of work towards that PharmD degree?
I would say that's a hard question, because I just feel like I am excited about everything, but I guess something that has been on my mind a lot, and I guess for most students this has also been on their mind too during their P4 year, is probably mid-year, because I've heard so many stories about mid-year from upperclassmen, and I know that for fellowships at mid-year we'll have to do interviews, which makes me nervous but at the same time excited. So I think that has definitely been on my mind a lot, but also with rotations, I'm just excited to just learn more, because I know that since my first 3 months have been in industry, I'm also excited to also put my knowledge into practice for the clinical side too.
Yeah, I think so too. So going back to mid-year and the fellowship, So can you maybe explain to the listeners what a fellowship is and how maybe it's different than a residency, and then the type of, obviously you want to go into industry, so is a fellowship something that people working in the pharmaceutical industry, is it something that they need to get a job there in that setting?
Sure. So for pharmaceutical industry fellowships, I guess how it's different from residencies is that at mid-year for fellowships, students typically interview at mid-year for different positions, while for residencies, students typically learn more about the residency programs and apply. And I believe that they write their letter of intent after mid-year, and then residency students, like students applying for residency, typically have interviews in February, while for fellowships it's usually in January. In regards to if fellowship is absolutely needed to get a position in the industry, from what I've heard from my mentors and also alumni, is that it's not absolutely necessary, but I've heard that the skill sets that you gain from going through a fellowship is similar to, like, let's say you do like a 1-year fellowship. I've heard that it's similar to a 3 to 5 year work experience. So,
Sure.
So that's definitely very valuable. And I also see that there's a lot to learn with fellowships, because I know that some fellowships also offer mentoring within the fellowship, which I also think is very valuable.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, I think a residency is something like that 3 to 5 year mark as well. So kind of the same, but different enough. So awesome. Let me think. So we got through every question. So I'm trying to think. Is there anything else you wanna like talk about that you can think of?
I can't really think of anything else, but I just wanted to thank you for taking the time for doing this podcast. I really thank you so much.
Oh yeah, no problem. So Sang, thanks for being on the Pharmacy Podcast, and best of luck to you as you continue your P4 year.
Yeah, thank you so much, Emily.
Yeah, thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Pharmacy Future Leaders Podcast with your host, Tony Guerra. Be sure to share the show with the hashtag Pharmacy Future Leaders.